I mean, who knew that Ferengi public libraries went so hard? This is why you should support your local libraries, people. Hello interwebs, I hope you're all doing well because it is time to review yet another episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, this time Season 4, Episode 6, Parth Ferengi's Heart Place? I think I got that episode title right. Well, we'll see. I probably mispronounced something.
I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
But anyways, yes, this is a Ferengi-focused episode, so staying spoiler-free up front. This was great. This was our largest look at Ferenginar that we've ever gotten in a Star Trek episode ever. Like, we've been on Ferenginar before in some episodes of Deep Space Nine with Quark and Rom, but it was mostly just, like, inside of rooms, like houses and stuff. And actually, one of my biggest problems with the Ferenginar episodes of Deep Space Nine is they always felt like a set. Like, even the Grand Negus's, like, throne room was just, like, this small little room that was very clearly on a sound stage somewhere, and they didn't have a lot of budget for it. So it's kind of disappointing always when we went there, even though the episodes themselves were always decent. But this episode, like, explodes that out, and we get to actually see the planet in its full glory, which I adored. I love that this season is giving us, like, with Orion and Ferenginar and a couple other places, like, looks at parts of the Star Trek universe that we haven't really gotten a chance to, like, explore in depth and do it in a way that we could never do elsewhere because this is animation. Just gorgeous and love that aspect of it. Without spoiling too much, there are some fun returning faces this episode that I loved. I was like, oh my god, it's these people. I don't want to spoil it for you, I haven't seen the episode yet. But that was a lot of fun and gave us some good returning guests and getting to see where they're at, with some interesting commentary on the Federation with that as well, which is what I love Star Trek Lower Decks for. But we also get some movement on the Rutherford and Tendi situation. I'll talk about that in more depth, but I did really like this episode for Rutherford and Tendi. And also, Mariner gets a very cool, like, arc here with a character returning from Season 1, who I was wondering if we ever get to see again, if they would follow up on him. Quimp the Ferengi from, I think, Episode 2 of Season 1. So all that stuff was great, and then Boimler's stuff was just, like, a weird little fun side story for him that was really enjoyable, and I really liked that quite a lot. So overall, this was another really great episode, but I think what I loved most of all for it was the bits for our characters, and then also exploring Ferenginar in a way we've never gotten a chance to do before. So loved it. But to talk more specifically, let's get into spoilers. So now that we're in spoilers, we start off the episode with something that I've been criticizing all season long so far, even since I think episode 2 of this season, but I did like this one a little bit more, and that is the little vignettes we get to see with this ongoing arc with this mysterious ship blowing up different alien craft around the entire Alpha and Beta quadrants. Now, like I said, I've been criticizing this a lot because the structure has always stayed the same. We get a little vignette with a specific alien species, and then they get blown up, and it's just like, oh, look at this alien species being weird, kind of trying to do Ouija dudes like the Lower Decks on different ships. And it's been fun overall, but structurally not really shifting all that much. And this still falls into that where it's like, it's the same thing, doing the same thing that we've seen already, just with a different alien species. That being said, I like this one a little bit more for two reasons. One is, like the Orion episode, this one does tie into the ongoing story with the Ferengi as well, because we learned that the Ferengi want to join the Federation because their trade routes have been disrupted by the ship. So that ties in, but that was similar to what the Orion episode is. And then also a subtle thing here is that we learned that one of the Ferengi on the ship actually communicated with the ship and was what lured them there. So we do learn that the ship isn't just running around getting people randomly. It does have some level of communication. There is some intelligence behind it that, like, reaches out to people. So I like that there's a little movement forward here that at least provides something else, because all the other vignettes, for the most part, just, like, did the same thing. We don't get any new information. It just, like, shows up, destroys another ship, right? So here there's at least a little bit more, giving me something to glom onto that changes this up, the dynamic, a little bit. I wish it was more, but I do like this one the best of the ones that we've seen so far, even if I do find it still a little bit reiterative. But that brings us over to Ferenginar itself, and we get Rom and Lita back, and I love this. Max Grodenchik and Chase Masterson back once again, being the progressive leaders of Ferenginar. I loved it, though clearly they progressed things quite a lot, considering that Ferengi women weren't all naked, and seemed to be decently respected on Ferenginar. That's a lot of shifts for just a few years. I mean, I'm here for it. Yes, hell yes, feminism, not hell for feminism. Hell yes, feminism. But yeah, a lot of work already been done.
I'll do the best I can.
But I did love the storyline where they're negotiating to get into the Federation, which would be a big shift if the Ferengi Alliance got into the Federation. Big, like, status quo change for lower decks to do. Though this is just the beginnings of that, so they could always take it back at some point if some other, Star Trek show down the line didn't want to do that. But that being said, I love the storyline with them and Freeman, where, like, Rom is playing kind of dumb, like, oh, I just love baseball, and I love that he's just into baseball. I love it. And then Lita playing, like, good cups, like, oh, my husband doesn't really get it. And Freeman's like, no, they're tricking you, Admiral. And the Admiral's just constantly giving into the demands over and over again, to the point where he's just like, he's like dancing for them. I thought that was hilarious. Like, all of these beats were wonderful. But it also kind of is like a larger commentary on Star Trek The Next Generation, right? Like, one of the big problems with, like, the Federation in the era of The Next Generation is that they are constantly just treaty happy. Like, they're just giving out treaties like it's no big deal. It's like, oh yeah, we want to appease the Cardassians, just sign a treaty, and that's what creates the Maquis, right? So over and over again, this has been a big problem, that the Federation has just been treaty happy, not really actually willing to address conflicts, partially leading to the Dominion War because they were so ineffectual against the Dominion. And so here, that sort of mindset still crops up in this Admiral, and Freeman being like, no, we actually should try to push back against this and actually not just bend over to their whims. And this leading to her tricking them by saying, oh yeah, just sign this, you just have to bring a planet into the Federation, and the fine print saying they have to bring in Kronos, which is the Klingon homeworld, which was never, well, actually, it might happen one day considering how things go after Star Trek 6 and in The Next Generation, but certainly it would be a lot harder than any other planet. And so, that sort of lets them sort of get off the hook of this negotiation. But I love that what ultimately it leads to is that the Ferengi being like, oh, we want you to respect our culture, and our culture is like, we do these deals. And so I love that there's like a Starfleet way for them to respect Ferengi culture, because I feel like it's always like a hard thing. Like, they did an episode of Deep Space Nine where it was like Jake and Nog were kind of at each other's like, oh, well, you don't respect my culture, you see it as important. Jake's like, oh yeah, we just learn to respect each other. But it's always weird with the Ferengi because they're like sexist quite often.
She's so dumb. She's perfect.
And like awful like business people, capitalists, which is somewhat incompatible. Like, ethically, it's wrong. Let's just be fair about all of that. So like, it's hard to like do like, you don't respect our culture when like ethically there's some fucked up things in your culture. But here there is a way where the show finds a way to like walk that line, and actually show like a respect for Ferengi culture that doesn't disrespect Starfleet values, which I did actually really enjoy. So all of that was great. And it was wonderful to see Chase Masterson and Max Groden check back in the episode. So loved all of that. But going down to the planet, we had some fun stories going on there. Boimler getting stuck and watching TV in a hotel room was wonderful. And also I should mention they're doing the Traveler's Guides, which the Traveler's Guides are an actual thing. There were published books that came out a few years ago. I think there was one for Vulcan and Kronos, I believe, so you can actually go out and buy them. They're real books that exist, so it's a nice little reference to that. But Ferenginar is fun, where Boimler gets stuck watching TV and just gets obsessed with it. Like, I love it. I love the many jokes that they have here. Like, one was like, oh, they can just lie to you in commercials, which was very funny. Or also like, oh, they put like jokes, commercials in the shows, and then you have the Paramount Plus logo behind Boimler, which was also very funny. I also liked how based it was. Like, one of the shows that we saw was like Boimler watching like a cop landlord, and of course Ferengis, the capitalists, would have cop landlords. Like, yes, the show is saying some things, so liked that was very subtle, a little political dig there. And so I thought all of that bit with Boimler just stuck watching like The Office for 8 hours essentially was very, very funny. But and it's just like a smart way to like comment on modern day TV in a Star Trekian way, because people don't watch TV in modern day Star Trek, so having it on Ferenginar, which is a very capitalist society, what a shock. Like, that they would have the same sort of things there. So loved all of that. This ultimately leads to Rutherford and Tendi, which I loved. I have been made no bones about the fact that I am a big Rutherford Tendi shipper. I see Boimler and Mariner as platonic, but Rutherford and Tendi I ship. But I've also heard some people saying that they see Rutherford and Tendi as platonic. And I like that this episode actually, it made me kind of see like, oh, I kind of do see them as platonic a little bit, even though I ship them still. Where they like are constantly like joking, like, oh, we're just a couple. couple. We have to pretend to be a couple. And then like them saying sweet things to each other. It's like, oh, I love your eyes. Like having to in the like just these awkward moments of like, oh yeah, just sweet. But then getting embarrassed when they do have to do couple things together, forced by the Ferengi. And I thought, again, it's very like farcical, right? Where like they're trying to like, you know, hide the fact that they're not actually a couple from them. And then the stakes get raised with the Ferengi and the Starfleet Bar and Grill, which is a lot of fun. Being like, oh, you need to, what was it? Oh, it's a felony to lie to get a discount on Ferenginar, because of course it would be. And then Rutherford and Tendi like having to like say like nice things about each other and then consummate their like marriage in like a shuttle pod thing was all very funny. But then them like pretending to be like weird just like thruple with Miglimo and Miglimo being like, oh no, I was just here doing my food blog, I didn't mean to ruin your marriage. And him getting into it was just very, very fun. And also Miglimo running like a foodie blog in the future. Hilarious. Strange new meals, of course he would. Of course he would be a foodie. Love that for Miglimo. We stand a foodie bird. And then finally this leads to Mariner and Quimp's storyline, which I think was the deepest one. Where I loved seeing Quimp back from season 1. I always liked that idea. That was my first, like, Quimp was like my first read on Lower Decks, is like, oh, they get Star Trek. Where I was like, oh, they're just gonna do the Ferengi as like the humans. And then it turns out Quimp was actually not that.
Hinting enough for you? Human!
You were perfect, Quimp.
That was like the first time I recognized in Lower Decks, like, you understand like the deep lore of Star Trek and what Star Trek's like actually about. So like I like seeing his character back, because he's just such a memorable moment for me, and understanding why Lower Decks is my favorite Star Trek show right now. So like I love seeing him back, and I like seeing him just be an earnest friend with Mariner, still taking out predatory loans, but like still caring about her. Like I it's very easy to put like the Ferengi, again, even when you recognize that they're not all like humans, whatever, that they are like they are people. They do care about others, and Quimp like cares about Mariner, and like is just like, oh yeah, let's get drinks, and Mariner's just like daggering of the mind. I love that reference. And then going to a public library, which is of course just another casino, because this planet is very Vegas-like, because of course Ferenginar would be Vegas-like. And then Mariner just picking fights with like a sweet biker gang Ferengi's like, oh, I'm sorry, I will pay back, and she's just like, oh, it's all bargain, no bite. And leading to Quimp being like, Mariner, you everything's going well for you, and yet you're still rebelling. And there's something going on with Mariner where she just feels like she can't trust anybody and pushes everyone away. That's just who she is. We've known this as a character, and I like her finally being able to like deal with that and recognize that through this situation with Quimp. I really, really thought that was very important for her arc, and I love seeing it here. But this also leads to like the final joke of the episode that I really loved, that I want to talk about, which is the Dominion War Memorial, which is just a receipt of like costs that they lost in the Dominion War, not people. That's perfect for the Ferengi. Like just a war memorial that's just like profits lost. That's the most Ferengi thing I've ever heard of, and I nearly died at that one. Just like, so much lost income. Like, lovely. Absolutely lovely. So all of that was great, and I love that it ends on like an ambiguous place for Mariner. It's not like everything's solved. Like, this is gonna be probably her arc for the next like few episodes of this season as we go into the finale, because already more than halfway through the season, which is upsetting. So I loved this episode really a lot. This was a lot of fun. There's a lot of great jokes, but also like movement forward on Rutherford Tendi stuff. Oh, and also them like having chemistry in the Jeffries tube. Of course, you can still read them. I like this episode because it walks that line of like, you can still read them as platonic, you can read them as romantic, put whatever you want onto them as fictional characters. But I did have a lot of fun with that. So yeah, overall pushes that forward. It pushes Boimler in just like a fun little comedic way, but also most importantly pushes Mariner forward, and also brings us back like two of our favorite characters from Deep Space Nine, right? So yeah, this was a great episode of Lower Decks. I am loving this season so far. I'm sad that we're only have what, four more episodes left. Season goes by way too fast, everybody. All right, love you all, and I hope you all enjoyed this one. Let me know what you thought about this one down in the comments below, and I hope you all, my friends, live long and prosper.